all over the world. Every 2 weeks, I interview inspiring runners about running, life, and everything in between. If you love to run and you are looking for a different way to improve your English, then please hit the subscribe button. You can also visit my webpage www.englishforthelongrun.com for more inspiration and tips. Hope you enjoyed here, and thank you for listening. So today I have the huge honor to chat with Shay Eskew from Nashville, Tennessee, the United States. His story is so unbelievable that if you would see a movie about his life, you'd probably say, hey, great story, but no way one guy can overcome so many obstacles and stand out in sports the way he does. His life is stranger than fiction. In a nutshell, at the age of 8, the trajectory of his life changed forever. He was accidentally set afire when playing with a girl from the neighborhood. And as a result, 65% of his body is covered with burn scars, and he has endured 43 surgeries in around 40 years. After the accident, the doctors told him he would never be able to engage in any kind of athletic exercise again. So who would have thought that this boy one day would compete in nearly 70 triathlons, including the Ironman World Championship in Kona, Hawaii. And she's also a motivational speaker, writer of a best-selling book I like very much. It's What the Fire Ignited, husband and father of 5 kids. So welcome, Shay. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here and speak to your audience today.
Thank you. I know you just came back from a trip to Italy with your family. How was Italy?
It was a great trip, but much like everything that we do, there was a lot of obstacles. We had 2 canceled flights, 4 days of delays. My daughter blew out her knee 5 days before we left. She's having surgery in 3 days. She had to wear a leg brace the entire trip, so she couldn't walk. It was very challenging.
Wow, in Italy.
Yes, but we made the most of it. We saw some amazing things. My wife's family is from Italy, and so it was pretty amazing to go back and see everything and just see the rich history.
Yeah, it's a beautiful country. You went to the Como Lake, didn't you?
We did. There again, that's a beautiful place, but a lot of hills, which did not bode well for my daughter. We didn't realize there was no public transportation per se.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So let's start with your story. As I said in the introduction, you were severely injured at the age of 8. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened to you?
Sure. So it was August 4th, 1982. I was 8 years old. My mom had asked me to warn my neighbors about an aggressive yellow jacket's nest. So I recruited my 7-year-old friend. We walked across the street. We knocked on the door. The dad wasn't home, but the 15-year-old daughter was. And as we started to tell her about these yellow jackets, she asked us if we would help her get rid of them. And I preface this by saying I had the most conservative parents you've ever met. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't cuss. I wasn't allowed to go to fireworks shows, wasn't allowed to be around smokers. I didn't even know how to light a match. And as we're pointing out the nest to the girl, she asks us to stand about 15 feet away from the nest that's in the ground. She grabbed a match, lit it, threw it down. But we all know a match in and of itself does nothing. As we're standing there, without saying a word, she grabs a cup of gasoline, stands behind us and pitches it. And it splashes me on the right side of my face and my shoulder, hits my buddy on the left side of his face and body. And as soon as it hits that match, in an instant, we're engulfed in flames. Luckily, I remembered to stop, drop, and roll. I was able to extinguish my flames, looked over, and I saw my buddy was still on fire. He stood there screaming. So I grabbed a water hose and put him out. The rest was history. I spent the next 3 months in the hospital. My right arm was physically melted to my body. It would be 3 years before I could lift it over my head. I had to learn how to write left-handed to finish the 3rd grade. My right ear had to be amputated. And as you mentioned, 65% of my body was now permanently covered in burn scars.
It's amazing, because I read your book and you spoke about the fact that when you're healing from burn scars, you're also prone to a lot of infections. And you have spent, as a small child, a lot of time in hospitals, and you were even relocated for surgery. You had to go away from your family, from your home, from your city. And without you lived in a hospital room for a very long period of time at the beginning, when you were 8 years old, without family, friends, or even familiar faces. What do you remember of that period of your life?
I remember it was hard, long. There were no assurances things would get better, right? Like, nobody knew. And being stuck 500 miles away from everything that you knew, friends, family, even your own dog. I remember my mom would call home so we could put the dog on the phone just because you wanted that familiar voice.
Yeah.
And you wondered if you would ever get out of there. And that was one of the things that drove me. Was I said, look, if I ever get out of this hospital, I'm going to commit every single day to reclaiming my life as an athlete. And that became my outlet. It's one of those things. I think we're all driven the same, that when somebody tells us there's something we can't have and can't do, just like when they said, I'll never play sports again, there's nothing you want more. Yeah. Just like somebody said, you can never have chocolate ice cream again. I don't care if you like ice cream, you all of a sudden crave chocolate ice cream. Yes. And that's what it was for me. And so that journey to reclaiming my life started with becoming an athlete. And that was the identity I wanted to create. Yeah. I did not want to be seen as a burn kid, because everything about me said that. When people looked at me, they would usually, their facial expressions said they were in shock. Many of them would make comments like, ooh, gross, what happened to you? Why don't you have an ear? There were kids in school that would call me Freddy Krueger. I don't know if your audience knows the story Nightmare on Elm Street, but in the US, it was really big.
It was also very big in Spain. And I'm originally from Holland. And I remember it was a terrible movie. I had nightmares after seeing it. Yes.
Yeah. And so they would call me Freddy Krueger. And I can tell you, when I looked in the mirror, that's what I saw. I saw Freddy Krueger looking back at me. So much so that I did not want to look at the right side of my face in the mirror, because all I could see was that horrible monster. But one of the things that I came to realize was no amount of crying, begging, pleading, praying was going to make these scars go away. This was my new reality. I had to embrace it. And so part of that for me has always been laughter and humor. And so when I went back to school and those same kids would call me Freddy Krueger, I would say, yes, I'll see you in your dreams tonight.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things you just got to do. And so you realize that your shortcomings, if they bother you, you project that weakness, and people feed off that. But as soon as you let people know, hey, look, I'm fine with all these scars. I'm fine that I don't have an ear. I don't need your validation to know what I can do and achieve in this life. And then you realize it's not an issue for everybody else. And I think that's where the healing starts from, right? As soon as you learn to love yourself with all of your imperfections, you start realizing how amazing things can be now that you're not putting these limitations on yourself.
Yeah. Wow. That's very impressive. This all happened in the 80s, right?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. And you were talking about rejection and you flipped it around, because what you were talking about was that your burn scars made you look very different, even scary. And you dealt with it, turning it around, validating yourself. And I just wanted to come back a little bit, because I would like to talk about the burn scars are only a part of it, right? Because there are a lot of other consequences as well. When I read your book, I mean, I didn't know. You write about the fact that it's very hard for you to sweat. You can't sweat. And burnt skin doesn't sweat and it stays shorter. So this meant that when you were a child, you grew, but your skin didn't. Can you tell a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a blessing and a curse, right? So as you grow, your percentage of burns shrink because the scars physically can't grow. But what happens is it becomes like a tourniquet on your body, because those scars, like, I was burned all the way around my entire arm. And so they literally would cut me from the top of my shoulder down to my bicep. And when all they did was just cut it to release the pressure, it split open 3 inches. Just the amount of pressure, 3 inches. You could put your fingers in that crevice when they cut it, and you couldn't see them because it sunk in. It took 10 years for this void in my arm to fill in. I remember so much so that when I would take my shirt off at the pool or the beach, people would always say, "What happened to your arm?" And I would tell them, "Hey, look, I got attacked by a shark. A shark took a big bite out of my arm." And it looked like that. I had several kids were even scared to get in the ocean because they too were afraid they would get eaten by a shark. Yeah. So the same thing happened to my neck. I've had it done now, I think 5 times, where they would cut my neck, let it release the pressure, and put skin in. I just had it done 3 months ago. I think that's one of the things people don't realize is burn trauma is not something you really outgrow. I've had 4 surgeries the last 2 years.
Yes.
And I've still got some more coming up just because of the complications involved with burn surgeries. It is the hardest trauma to affect, because the impact goes beyond the normal skin layers. It goes, all the way down to the bone potentially. Okay. And as you mentioned, I don't have sweat glands on a third of my body, which means I can't sweat on that third of my body, but the other 2/3, I can't stop sweating. Mm. So when I'm racing in Ironman races, I know I sweat 5 pounds every hour for 10 hours straight.
Wow.
And so knowing that, there's no way you could replace it ounce for ounce, in these races. And so generally during the marathon portion of the race, I'm urinating blood because I am so dehydrated.
Wow.
But it's just you kind of embrace it. Like once you know what you're up against, I know it's not going to kill me to keep racing, but it does limit just how hard you can go, right?
Yeah, it's very impressive. I mean, circling back, the doctors told you that you would never be good at sports anymore after the accident, but your father signed you up very soon after the accident happened and after you came back from the hospital for the baseball team, the football team, and you even became a very good wrestler in high school. And with all the complications you're talking about with your burn trauma, how is this even possible? Because I think you have to really work 5, 10, or 15 times harder than the rest.
Yeah, and I think part of it is knowing that, look, when I got out there, I knew I was going to be the worst player on the field. You mentioned baseball. I played baseball 2 months after getting out of the hospital. I couldn't lift my arm, but I could throw a ball underhand. And so my dad put me at second base because that was the shortest distance to first. And so when a ball came to me, I could throw it underhand to first base. When I played football, they were worried if I got hit or sustained a cut, I could bleed out because I would never feel it. And so my dad inserted 2 additional inches of padding and my shoulder pads to protect me. And I can tell you every single game, people would knock me down, basically just plow me. But I loved it. I loved the fact that nobody was treating me with kids' gloves. I wasn't getting special treatment. For those 2 hours every Saturday, I felt like a normal kid.
Yeah.
And I think that's what all of us want. We don't want special treatment. We're okay not being the best, knowing that we're doing our best. So one of the things that I realized was I lost my ability to be competitive in any sport that required finesse or touch. But if there was a sport that required all-out effort, last man standing, whoever had the highest pain threshold wins, those were sports I did well in. That's why I did really well in wrestling, boxed all through college, never lost a match, and have had a pretty good run in Ironman.
Yeah.
And it was never because I was the best or the fastest, but it's because I never gave up. And I think that's one of the things people need to realize, that we're all giving special talents.
Yeah.
And it's selecting the right field for us to compete on, right?
Yeah.
Like if somebody wants to do sprints, I'm never going to beat you. But if we make it where, hey, who can go the longest for a full day, that's where I'm going to stand a really good chance.
Yeah. Yeah. You were talking about the Ironman. I'm just going to tell that an Ironman is a 3.86 kilometer swim, a 180 kilometer bike ride, and for dessert, a marathon. Yes. So that takes me to another point, because in your book, you mentioned that you believe that God puts people on our path. The problem is that we're just too busy and we're not aware of it. But if it wasn't for that one guy you met, you would probably not have started to do triathlons or Ironman competitions. Is that correct?
100%. And I remember that day. It was in 2008. I was in the gym working out. At the time, I was 34, and I was 45 pounds heavier than what I am now. So what is that, about 20 kilos, I guess, maybe? Yeah. So I was about 22 kilos heavier. And this 65-year-old man walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, tough guy." And I said, "You talking to me?" He says, "Yes, I'm talking to you." He goes, "Why don't you come into my boot camp class? It's just me and a bunch of ladies. Shouldn't be anything for a guy like you with all your muscles." He obviously knew exactly what he was doing, right? Never wanted to back down. I said, "Whatever, old timer." So I walked in the class. Sure enough, it's me and all women. 10 minutes in the class, I'm in tears, because all we're doing are core exercises, planks, sit-ups, leg lifts.
Burpees.
None of them. Yeah, burpees. Nothing that I trained for. I had zero cardio. In the last 5 minutes, he's calling out push-ups, and I was so fatigued. He drops down beside me and he starts yelling at me, and he goes, "Eskew, ponytails is kicking your butt. You better pick it up, boy." And all I could say was, "Yes, sir." My pride was shattered. What I found out was he's a former Marine drill sergeant. He was one of the original Ironman finishers in 1978. I went home and told my wife I got my butt handed to me by a 65-year-old man. I said, he doesn't know who he's messing with. So I was back in his class every day. I dropped over 10 kilos in the next 6 weeks, and we became really close friends. And during that time, he got diagnosed stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He made it almost a year, but right before he passed away, a group of us said, "Henry, we're going to do the next big triathlon. We don't care the distance." And so he passed away a week later. So we all signed up for what's called a half Ironman, right? So it's half the distance of a full Ironman. I didn't own a bike. I bought a $500 bike off Craigslist. Never had swam, so I signed up for swim lessons. Haven't ran since college. Hated running. Absolutely hated it. But I did it to honor Henry. So we
Sorry,
trained.
how many months did you have for this half Ironman?
So we had, I think, about 3.5 months to get ready for it. So we had plenty of time. Did the race, had a great race, was really happy with myself. And that night we're all celebrating because there was a group of 7 of us that did it from that boot camp class. And one of the guys said, hey, let's do the same race twice 5 months from now. So I went home and signed up for the full Ironman. Nobody else did. And so fast forward, the day before the Ironman race, I run into Henry, the guy who got me to do it. I run into his daughter. And she said, Shay, Daddy's going to be watching you tomorrow. I said, I know he will. She goes, no, I'm serious. You know, this is the 1-year anniversary of Daddy passing away.
No way.
Right now. I hadn't even thought about it. Again, I just kind of went where things were leading me. And it's been addiction since, right? It's really changed my life because one of the things you learn about through endurance sports, you learn that you can achieve anything if you can break it down to the smallest components. Like, how do you back into it? It's not, how do I run a marathon? It's, how do I run 1 mile 26 times?
Yeah.
What do I need to do tomorrow to start on that path? And so my whole life has been like that, right? Like, I meet people that it seems very coincidental, but I act on it because I believe, hey, look, God truly does put people in our life every day. But most of the time we ignore it because we think, hey, you know, it's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
But I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
And I can't, my book happened because of that same type of meeting. Somebody told me to go meet this guy. I messaged him. And sure enough, at dinner, he said, look, my question to you is, when are you writing your damn book? And I was like, I didn't come here to this meeting to write a book. But after I left our dinner, I called my wife and said, hey, guess what, babe? I'm writing my book. I'm starting tomorrow. She goes, we never even talked about it. I said, I'm telling you, I believe God put this guy at dinner tonight.
Yeah.
And that's been a game changer for me as well.
Yes.
Right. So I've just really tried to evaluate when I meet people, figure out what impact will this have on my life? What am I missing?
Yeah.
How can I use this encounter?
Yeah. I think you mentioned in your book that you also met this Iron grandmother, sister, I don't know her name. She's an 83-year-old triathlete, and she's amazing. Iron Nun, yes.
Sister Madonna Buter.
Exactly. How is she?
She's amazing. I mean, she's older now. Now she's 90. She's still racing, but not doing Ironman. And what I love is when people say, and she's a true nun, and they said, sister, and she didn't start till she was 55.
I know, yeah.
They say, hey, what's your secret? She goes, I've got God on my side, right? And it's just, that's what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be somebody like her that, when I met her, it was at the Ironman World Championships in Kona. She was 83 then, and they were interviewing her the night before the race, and they said, Sister Madonna, why are you doing the race? You said you were done with Ironman. She said, well, that's because Bob signed up, and there's no way I'm letting the men go unchecked. I was like, who does that? Who at 83 says, I'm going to do an Ironman just because some guy signed up? Somebody's got to represent us women.
It's incredible. Right? Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. You also mentioned in the book, and I like that very much, that it's very, that you should surround yourself with people that are kind of more intelligent than you are, or smarter, or have had some kind of revelation already. That's true, right?
Yeah. I think it's key to surround yourself with people that have done amazing things because they encourage you to stretch yourself. They're not the ones that say, that's dumb. Why would you ever do that? They're the ones saying, absolutely, go for it, man. Yeah. Right? And I think that's the problem is so many of us surround ourselves with people that are scared to take risk, and they impose their fears on us.
Absolutely.
As opposed to encouraging us to take it and saying, hey, when you stumble, I'm here for you. And so I've been fortunate enough to meet and surround myself with people that encourage me to take on these challenges. I get invited to these crazy challenges. And I know when I stumble, they're going to be there to lift me up, right? And I think that's the key in life is there's so much more than we can ever do if we just have the courage to attempt it.
Yeah.
Like if somebody were to ever say, one day you're going to have 5 kids. I say, you're crazy. Like nobody does anything that crazy.
Yeah.
But now that I'm 17 years into it, 5 kids, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, I can't imagine a life without that.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah. So they're all teenagers. Almost all teenagers. Wow.
They act like teenagers, but yes.
Well, you were talking about not being told that that was a dumb or that something is a dumb idea. And I wanted to ask you about a challenge you took on this year. I think it was in January. It's the World Marathon Challenge. And for people who don't know what that is, it's a challenge where you run 7 consecutive days a marathon on, they say, 7 different continents. And the craziness here lies in the fact that after running a marathon, you have to catch a flight and probably be on a flight for hours and hours. Then you go to this other country, you have to run again. So first of all, how was the experience? Because I can imagine when a lot of things can go wrong during a marathon, during 7 marathons on 7 continents, there are so many things that can go wrong. How was the experience?
It was incredible. And first, this one was different. It was not the official World Marathon. This one was put together by a Navy SEAL friend of mine. And he said, look, I want to do something that's never been done. I want to do 7 skydives, 7 marathons, then 7 plunges. Sea, air, land for SEAL, right? Navy SEAL. Nobody's ever attempted that, right? And so, I mean, right out of the gate, we had setbacks. We had storm came into Antarctica. And so we had to shift and said, all right, tomorrow morning, we're starting in Cape Town.
Yeah.
They found a spot where they did a base jump off the side of a mountain. We ran our marathon and did a swim. And then the next day we flew to Perth, Australia. We got held up in customs. So instead of running on the run course, we had to run from the airport, right? And so we're literally running in the airport to get all our miles in before we board the plane.
And that was not the plan, of course. The plan looked very nice on paper.
Yeah, all of it did. And really the plan went out the moment we got there. But it's unreal. Like I spent the whole week surrounded by elite special force members, Green Berets, Delta Force members, Navy SEALs. We got to skydive over the pyramids at Giza. Who does that? Who gets to skydive over the pyramids? And then as soon as you land, go run a marathon, right?
Also in the desert.
Yes. I mean, the running conditions were miserable. There's nothing about that I'd want to repeat for the marathons. But the experience, and that's one of the things you can't put words around, is like to share those experiences with people, to see everybody at some of their weakest moments and to be able to support each other. And that's the thing that I've been very fortunate to be on successful teams, but a lot of it was individual. And my job was always to run as fast as I can or be as fast as I can, right? My job on this team was to make sure everybody got across the finish line. Like I was not supposed to run as fast as I can. My job was to make sure we all finished, which meant I had to run significantly slower than I wanted to. But it meant so much to me to be able to contribute in that, right? And that was one of the things I think it's just part of age and the growth that comes from, look, it's not all about you, right? You've kind of feel like you've checked all the boxes that fill your ego. Now it's, hey, what can I do to help others? And what can I do to be a part of a lasting legacy? And everything that we did on this trip was to benefit mental health of veterans.
Mental health for veterans, right? Yes.
Correct.
You are raising awareness for that.
100%. And so we had to undergo stringent testing, supplementation. All of this has been charted because they want to figure out how can we simulate combat, which is what they were calling what we were doing. Sleep deprived, jumping out of planes, running, but yet perform at a high level.
Yeah.
And then once we do that, you go back home and be part of a family. Because that was the hard part. Literally, I finished Marathon 7. When I'm flying home to see my wife and kids, my wife's like, hey, look, I need you to run by the store, get some of my feminine products. I need you to go take the kids to soccer practice. And like, wait a minute. I was just playing.
That's real life.
Right?
You were Rambo.
I was superhero. Now I'm dad, husband, getting the grocery list. And that's what you realize our veterans are doing every single day.
Yes.
And you feel kind of lost because you don't have a mission. You're not living off adrenaline.
Wow.
That's why it was pretty cool to be able to part of that and put your body through all that.
Yeah, just to recap, I think it was Antarctica, Cape Town, Perth, Australia, Dubai. They say Madrid, but it's actually a village in the neighborhood of Madrid that's called Torrelaguna.
Well, we did a different one. Yeah, because this one wasn't part of the official, but we did we did Cape Town, Perth, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Cairo. We did London, then we did Cartagena, Colombia, and then Dallas.
Wow. What an experience. And how many of you were there? How many people participated?
So there were 7 athletes doing all that. And then we had a team of elite skydivers, base jumpers. We had a woman with us who's a bomb detonating specialist. She holds the world record for running a mile in a bomb suit. And so on every continent, she would run a mile in this bomb suit, which is
heavy, very heavy, I guess.
Yes, yeah. I think the suit weighs 35 to 40 kilos. And she's a small woman. She probably is only 50 kilos, right? But it's just amazing to be surrounded by all these people doing something that's never even been attempted. And who knows if anybody will ever attempt it again.
Exactly. Wow. Yeah, I saw some things on Instagram. It was really amazing to be able to see what you were doing. It was very, very impressive. So this brings me to something. I mean, you told us that there's so much in life we have no control over. And this experience, of course, was one of those experiences where you can see that when you have a plan, everything will go differently. And in your book, there's a funny thing. You say that you're a 1%er. If something can go wrong, it will. Can you explain this for people who haven't read your book yet?
It is. I think when you're a 1%er, you got to realize that when there's a 1% chance of something bad happening, it's you. But it's also a 1% chance of something good happening. And so all these things, like I've had so many surgery failures, complications, stuff that they said they've never seen. And they said, look, there's a 1% chance something like that happened. And it's happened to me many a times. It happened to me surgery 3 months ago, right? And as a result of it, I got to have 2 more surgeries because of a 1% chance something bad going wrong that did go wrong. But from that, you realize your ability to embrace that and say, hey, look, I know when I overcome this, I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to be able to do things that other people can't do because they've never had the adversity and the experiences I've been afforded. And I think some people look at bad experiences as torture or bad luck. But I think if you look at it as, hey, it's preparing you for something greater, it's a whole different mindset. Yeah. Right? Like if we're all honest, the things that we remember and value the most in life are the things that we sacrifice the most to get. Every time we sit around and tell stories over a glass of wine, it's like, hey, remember when?
Yeah.
It was those times where we didn't know how we'd pay rent. We didn't know how we'd finish school. So why is it every time something bad happens now, our first response is, poor me? Why me?
Yeah.
But what if when those things happen, we say, why not me?
Mm.
I know I can get through this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when I get through it, imagine what else I can do now because of this new experience.
Yeah.
That's what life has been like for me, guys. One thing after another, but you realize it's always preparing you for something better.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing. It's actually what you're saying is something like the obstacle is the way. It's something Stoic philosophers also tell us that that's the way you have to take life. So this is something you say in your book, actually. Every obstacle is a great opportunity in disguise. You even say that you're grateful for the accident. That's pretty strong. How
It
can you
is.
make us understand that?
And it's one of those, had you asked me when I was 13, 18, or 25, you would have gotten a different response. But now that I'm on the other side of it and I see all the blessings I've gotten, like name one thing in life I've missed out on because of my injury. Did I have to work 5 times as hard as everybody else? Absolutely. But it meant 10 times more because I know how hard I worked for it. Got a beautiful wife, 5 amazing kids, a great career. There's nothing I've missed out on. Nothing. Right? And I think that's the thing. Like, so many people want things to come easy and quick, but then it means nothing. Right?
Yeah.
And that's where I just think when I see obstacles in front of me, most people are scared of that. And so they're not even going to attempt to overcome it. And so there's a lot of opportunity just because I'm willing to take it on. Doesn't mean I'm better. It just means I'm not scared of it and I know I can get through it. And I think a lot of people don't have the confidence in knowing they can always get through it.
Yeah.
But once you do, life will never look the same.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing. I read also that you are a voracious reader. So maybe you can recommend a book for us, for our listeners, or if you prefer to recommend a documentary, running related, triathlon related film, that would be great.
You know, one of my favorite books of all time, it's the greatest adventure in the history of the world, is Endurance, the Ernest Shackleton. I don't know if you're
I haven't
familiar.
read it. I know the name, yes.
You have to read it.
Okay.
But his whole mantra was, look, keep the mind occupied. Right? They were stranded in Antarctica for 2 years. This is like 1917. Everybody survives. And but he kept their mind busy. They were focused on reading, they're in Antarctica, right? But he had them playing soccer. And that's the thing. I think if you would just keep your mind focused on what's going right in your life instead of dwelling on all the bad things, life's completely different. Because one of the things I know with 100% certainty is the brain will bring you more of what you want as opposed to what you don't want. So if you think life's out to get you, every day your brain is going to look for examples to confirm that belief. It's going to show you all these bad things that you never would notice, but because it thinks, hey, this is important to you, look at this, look at this. But if you are the one that believes, hey, every obstacle is an opportunity, your brain, everything says, hey, look at that. Imagine if we went in there and worked really hard. Imagine what we could get from that. And it brings you those kind of experiences every single day. And that whole process is called RAS, Reticular Activation System. Scientific proof around it. This is what your brain does every single day. And I think if you really start focusing on that, it changes your whole mindset.
Yeah, amazing. So this is my last question. What advice do you give to your children?
Mine is never quit.
Never quit.
And I said, no matter how you think it's going to end, finish what you start. And just like I shared with them last week, they were talking about this amazing athlete. And I pointed out, I said, I've beaten pro athletes in races, not because I was faster, but they quit. I finished. My time was not amazing, but I finished. And it does not say DNF, did not finish. And there's so many people in life quit just because things aren't going like they expect. But if you always just finish, you will never have the regret of wondering, what if, right?
Yeah.
And that's what, like, you wish people could understand just how valuable it is.
Yeah.
You know, just finish. That's it. Doesn't have to be pretty. Just finish what you start.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Shay. It was wonderful speaking to you, seeing you. And my last question, what are you up to in the coming months?
Well, I've got an Ironman race in 12 days.
Wow.
But I just learned I have a stress fracture in my leg, so that's going to be interesting. I'm doing Ironman 70.3 World Championships in Finland.
In Finland? Wow.
Finland, 6 weeks. And then to celebrate my 50th birthday in March, we're going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
Wow. I thought you were going to be a father now to your kids. I read something like that. I'm going to take it easier.
It is easy.
It's okay. It's your easy.
Yes. No, we try to stay busy.
Yeah. Wow. So thank you so much. It was amazing having you. And just for people, I will write in the listen notes the name of your book, What the Fire Ignited, How Life Worst Helped Me Achieve My Best, also your webpage and your Instagram handle. So thank you so much, Shay Eskew.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of English for the Long Run. If you like this episode and don't want to miss the next one, don't forget to hit the subscribe or follow button. If you're interested in taking your English to the next level while listening and reading about running, don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter, www.englishforthelongrun.com. Bye for now.